I was 29 when I finally realized loyalty at work meant nothing. 3 years. That's how long I gave everything I had to Weston Analytics, a mid-sized data consulting firm in Chicago. I was hired as a junior analyst, fresh out of grad school, full of energy, optimism, and this misguided belief that hard work always pays off. I was the first one in, the last to leave, and the one who always volunteered when someone else dropped the ball. And yet, somehow, I remained invisible. My job title changed twice. The workload doubled. But my salary? Not a single cent increase since the day I walked through those glass doors. At first I thought it was just bad timing, budget issues, maybe restructuring. Every quarter my boss, Cynthia Marks, gave me some new excuse. Cynthia was the kind of manager who wore sharp heels and sharper sarcasm. She had this uncanny ability to make you feel like you owed her for being employed. Every compliment came with a backhand. Every smile was a mask. "You've got potential," she'd say, eyes glazed over her screen. "But let's wait until Q3. That's when we'll really be in a position to reward strong performers." Q3 came and went. So did the next one. Then another. Every time I brought it up, respectfully, professionally, she'd deflect. "Focus on building long-term value," she'd say, or, "You're not quite where we need you to be leadership-wise." Yet she'd hand off her entire workload to me when she went on vacation. She even had me train the guy who got promoted over me last year. A guy who couldn't format an Excel sheet without Googling it. I watched others leave. Co-workers who refused to tolerate the stagnation. And while I secretly envied their courage, I stayed. I stayed because I kept telling myself I'd earned something here. That if I just waited a little longer, I'd get the raise, the recognition, the respect. That Cynthia would finally keep her word. But deep down I knew better. There were signs. The way Cynthia smiled tighter every time I asked questions. The way she'd leave me out of key meetings, then throw me under the bus when something went wrong. Once, she even forwarded my work to the VP and took credit. I confronted her, gently, and she gaslit me so hard I questioned if I was overreacting. "You need to stop worrying about credit," she said. "It's not about ego. It's about teamwork." That was rich, coming from a woman who once cut me out of a client win so she could claim the bonus alone. But I swallowed it. I always did. Because I'd been raised to be the good girl. The worker bee. The don't cause problems kind of employee. And it was costing me everything, my sanity, my sleep, my confidence. I started second-guessing myself. I stopped speaking up. I shrank slowly inside a job I used to love. Then, one night, after pulling another unpaid weekend to fix a client report Cynthia had ignored for weeks, I sat alone in the office and realized something. She was never going to reward me. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because keeping me desperate made her powerful. That night I quietly updated my resume. I didn't realize it yet, but this wasn't just going to be the end of my job. It was going to be the beginning of her downfall. The breaking point came quietly, like most betrayals do. It was a Thursday, the week before the holidays. I had worked 3 consecutive 12-hour days prepping reports for a client pitch Cynthia had procrastinated on for weeks. The night before, I missed my best friend's engagement dinner. The next morning, I dragged myself in with 4 hours of sleep and coffee I couldn't taste. That was the day I asked Cynthia, politely, if I could take the Friday after Christmas off. Just one day. Unpaid even. Her response. "You really think this is the time to start asking for favors? Maybe you should focus on proving your worth before you start acting entitled." Entitled. That word echoed in my skull the entire day. As if 3 years of unpaid overtime, sacrificed weekends, and emotional burnout had earned me nothing. Not even a day off. Not even dignity. I didn't say anything in the moment. I nodded, walked back to my desk, and opened a private browser window. I typed data analyst jobs, Chicago, remote, and hit search. That one click felt like a sin. Like betrayal. But it also felt like breathing again. For the next few weeks, job hunting became my secret rebellion. I updated my resume after midnight. I whispered cover letters into the quiet hum of my apartment. I scheduled Zoom interviews during lunch breaks I never took before. Every step was wrapped in guilt, like I was cheating on a partner who'd already emotionally abandoned me. But it was also the first time in months I felt hopeful. There were bites. Two actually. One from a smaller, fast-growing analytics startup with a great culture and solid pay. Another from a bigger player, more traditional but remote, and with a proper development program. Both were promising. Neither finalized, but enough to remind me I wasn't trapped. I started walking differently. Not out of confidence, not yet, but because I was finally walking toward something. And then one day I felt eyes. It was subtle. A coworker, Danny, whom I barely spoke to anymore, passed me in the hallway. She slowed for half a second. "You should be careful," she said under her breath. "People talk. And Cynthia listens." I smiled, pretending not to understand. But my stomach dropped. Was I being watched? Had she seen my browser open? Had someone overheard a phone call? My heart raced. I deleted apps, cleared my cache, switched to using my phone only, away from company Wi-Fi. From then on, I trusted no one. Still, I kept applying. Had to. I had come too far to turn back. Too tired to keep pretending loyalty was being returned. The guilt was still there, gnawing at me like a parasite. But beneath it was something stronger. Anger. Determination. I wasn't just looking for a new job anymore. I was looking for a way out, and maybe, just maybe, a way to take back what Cynthia had stolen from me. It happened on a Monday. The kind of gray, forgettable morning where the coffee tastes stale, and the office air feels heavier than usual. I was halfway through reviewing a client's data report when my Slack pinged. "Cynthia, can you step into my office? Now." No smile. No emoji. Just that tone, sharp, clipped, final. I walked in, heart thudding like it knew something I didn't. Cynthia was seated with her arms crossed, not even pretending to look busy. Beside her sat Julia from HR, face blank, holding a manila folder like it was loaded. "Close the door," Cynthia said. The moment it clicked shut behind me, she went in for the kill. "We've become aware that you've been job hunting on company time." I blinked. "What?" "You don't need to explain," she cut in. "We have the logs. Your internet activity. Several incidents. And we've received internal concerns." Internal concerns. She smiled thinly. A colleague came forward. "Said you've been taking interviews during work hours. You used company resources to pursue other employment. That's a breach of your contract." My mouth went dry. I looked at Julia, who avoided my eyes. I felt the walls collapse. Not just from the accusation, but from the realization. Someone had snitched. She had seen something. Maybe more than I realized. Or maybe she was covering herself, feeding Cynthia what she wanted to hear. "I didn't," I started to say, but it didn't matter. Never did. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately," Cynthia said, voice like ice. "No severance. No references. You'll be escorted out." Escorted. Like a criminal. Julia slid a paper across the table. "You can review this later. It's all standard." I didn't touch it. My head spun with humiliation, confusion, and a shame that didn't belong to me, but still sank into my skin. After everything I'd given. After every time I swallowed my pride and pushed harder, worked longer, stayed loyal while others walked away. This was how it ended. No warning. No second chances. Just betrayal, cold, clinical, and efficient. "I just want to understand." I tried again, quieter this time. That's when Cynthia leaned in slightly. Just enough for her voice to drop into a whisper meant only for me. "Next time," she said, smirking, "be smart enough not to get caught." That was the moment. Not when she fired me. Not when Julia walked me to my desk in silence as I packed the few things I cared about. A plant, a framed photo, a notebook full of dreams I'd outgrown. It was that line. That smug, vicious confirmation that this wasn't about professionalism. It was about control, punishment, power. She hadn't just ended my job. She had humiliated me. Made sure I knew I was small, replaceable, disposable. But what Cynthia didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the girl who walked into her office that morning wasn't the same one she'd manipulated for 3 years. I walked out of that building for the last time, jobless, but not defeated. The days after I was fired blurred together like smudged ink on a page. I stayed in my apartment, curtains drawn, the air thick with silence and shame. I didn't answer calls. I didn't tell my parents. My fridge was nearly empty, but I couldn't bring myself to care. There's something uniquely crushing about being discarded, like your value was tied to a building you're no longer allowed in. I kept replaying it in my head. That meeting, Cynthia's smirk, the silence in the elevator. I was humiliated, furious, but beneath it all I was scared. My savings wouldn't last forever. I'd built my identity around that job, and now it felt like I didn't know who I was without it. But then something shifted. It was a Tuesday night when I sat down with a glass of cheap wine and opened my laptop. Not to apply for jobs, not yet. I Googled one thing: wrongful termination, employee rights, Illinois. And that's when the spark lit. I learned that employers can't fire you for looking for another job, especially without cause. I read up on digital privacy, contract loopholes, labor protections. Then I remembered. Cynthia had never updated my contract since my promotion 18 months ago. There had been no formal documentation, just emails that opened the floodgates. I started digging through my personal inbox and backups. Emails from Cynthia where she admitted to holding raises back because optics didn't look right. Instances where she shifted blame to me for her missed deadlines. Screenshots of conversations where she overrode HR guidelines. I even remembered a client file she asked me to clean up, code for quietly adjusting numbers that didn't add up before an audit. Kept everything, quietly. At the time it was just habit. Now it was ammunition. 2 days later, I booked a consultation with a local employment lawyer, someone highly rated, with a sharp eye for corporate misconduct. I walked into that meeting with a flash drive, a stack of printed emails, and a very calm fury. She listened. She read. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "There's something here. Maybe more than one angle. Wrongful termination. Retaliation. Hostile work environment. Maybe even whistleblower protections, if the audit issues turned out to be serious." For the first time in weeks I felt taller. That same night I updated my resume again. But this time it wasn't out of desperation. It was strategy. I knew what I was worth now. I wouldn't settle for another Cynthia. I applied only to companies known for transparency, real development, real culture. And the responses? Immediate. Strong. I was no longer just looking for work. I was building leverage. Cynthia thought she fired me into silence. What she didn't realize was that she'd just created her own worst nightmare. The kind that reads fine print, takes notes, and has nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after my firing, I received 2 job offers. Both were better than anything Cynthia had ever pretended to promise. But one stood out. A mid-sized analytics firm with a reputation for ethical leadership and rapid growth. And, in a twist of poetic symmetry, they were a direct competitor of Weston Analytics. They offered me a senior analyst position. Fully remote. 32% higher pay. Full benefits. A real promotion. I signed the contract without hesitation. Starting that job felt like stepping out of a storm. My new manager actually listened. I was encouraged to take lunch breaks, even paid to upskill. But the best part, the new company had a detailed insight into Weston. Clients, projects, people. And in those early onboarding weeks, I learned more than I expected. One of the senior managers casually mentioned Weston had a reputation problem. Inconsistent client deliverables, high turnover, shady accounting. A few clients had left recently, citing lack of transparency. It was like a puzzle clicking into place. Turns out, Cynthia had been dancing on a tightrope for a while. And I wasn't the only one who fell. I reached out to a few ex-colleagues who had left before me. Some abruptly, others under mysterious pressure. One had taken a mental health leave that HR made nearly impossible. Another had proof that Cynthia falsified billable hours for a major client. They weren't just willing to talk, they were eager. Together we shared stories, compared emails. It was all matching up. Patterns of manipulation, favoritism, bullying, even fraud. Things that looked like corporate gray areas, in isolation, now revealed a deeply toxic system when viewed together. Armed with this, I met with my lawyer again. This time with even more documents. Statements. Within 2 weeks, we filed a formal complaint with the State Labor Board, citing wrongful termination, retaliation, and ethical misconduct. My lawyer sent a formal notice to Weston's legal department. It was real now, and they would have to respond. But I wasn't done. An old contact from Weston, someone in operations, quietly agreed to tip off an internal auditor. No names were used, just a nudge in the right direction. Financial inconsistencies, suspicious project logs, possible compliance breaches. And still I kept my distance. No drama, no threats, just paper trails and quiet conversations in all the right places. One evening, on a whim, I created a new email account and sent an anonymous tip to a local business journalist known for exposing corporate misbehavior. I didn't tell my lawyer. I just attached a redacted summary and offered a breadcrumb. Start with Weston's Q2 audit. Follow the client files. I didn't need credit. I just wanted the pressure to build. Meanwhile, Weston posted a job listing for my old role. I saw it on LinkedIn. It had been live for nearly a month. The description read like a plea disguised as opportunity. High-paced environment, multifunctional support, adaptable under pressure. Translation: do everything, question nothing. I scrolled through the applicants. Barely a dozen. None qualified. A recruiter friend later told me Weston had cycled through 3 temp contractors trying to fill the gap. None lasted more than 2 weeks. Of course they didn't. Because no one decent stays in a place where talent is treated like liability. From the outside, Weston still looked polished. Cynthia still posted motivational quotes on LinkedIn. Still gave fake smile interviews on leadership in tech. But the cracks were showing. 2 clients pulled out in Q3. Quietly, without fanfare. Another declined to renew their annual contract. A former coworker told me Cynthia had started micromanaging again, snapping at people in meetings, blaming junior staff for missed deadlines. That same coworker ended our chat with, "She's unraveling." I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about gloating. This was about balance. Justice. A reckoning long overdue. I had spent 3 years giving everything to a company that would have let me rot if it made Cynthia look better. Now I had a better job, a stronger network, and the truth on my side. And Weston. They were about to learn what happens when you burn someone who knows where all your matches are kept. It took a few months for the machine to move. Slow, grinding, but deliberate. Legal cases aren't like TV shows. There's no dramatic courtroom scene or pounding fists. Just paperwork, calls, documentation, and waiting. But one thing became clear. My complaint wasn't being ignored. The State Labor Board reached out for more information. Then my lawyer called, sounding more energized than I'd ever heard her. Weston had been notified of the investigation, and their legal team was scrambling. The kicker. My detailed email logs, the ones I'd almost deleted in a fit of post-firing rage, were now central evidence. There were threads where Cynthia instructed me to backdate performance reviews. Others where she dismissed my raise requests with vague excuses like budget constraints, only for us to hire a consultant 2 weeks later at triple the cost. Then there was the big one. An email chain where she subtly implied altering data before a client review. Phrased just vaguely enough to deny but clear enough that no one could mistake the intent. Those emails became the match that lit the fire. A formal internal audit was launched. Weston had no choice. The pressure from both the labor board and whispering clients was too loud to ignore. My old coworkers told me leadership suddenly stopped smiling in meetings. HR held confidential compliance refreshers. Someone from finance got let go quietly. And then came Cynthia's suspension. At first, it was announced as a temporary leave of absence. But the truth spread fast. She was escorted out of the building during a Wednesday lunch hour. No warning. No farewell email. Just like she'd done to me. Within days, the company made a bland, impersonal LinkedIn post. We thank Cynthia for her service and wish her well in her future endeavors. No mention of why. No acknowledgement of her so-called leadership. But people in the industry knew. Clients started pulling out, one after the other. Some cited alignment issues. Others gave no reason at all. But I knew. He knew. A few of those clients had reached out to my new company. And some of them came over. Not because I begged them to, but because they finally felt like they had an option. Then the emails started coming in. From former co-workers. People I hadn't spoken to in months. One said, "Thank you for doing what we were all too afraid to." Another, "I didn't have the strength to fight her. But I'm so glad someone did." I didn't cry. I just sat there rereading them, feeling something I hadn't in years. Closure. A few weeks later, the settlement came through. The company didn't want the case to go to court. Too much press risk. My lawyer negotiated hard. The final number wasn't just comfortable. It was life-changing. Enough to wipe out my student loans, buy a home, invest in my own startup one day. More than money, it was validation. And Cynthia. Her fall wasn't loud. It was slow, humiliating, permanent. Word spread. Quiet blacklisting. Friends of mine in HR told me her references had dried up. The leadership podcast she used to guest on removed her episodes. She updated her LinkedIn bio 3 times in 1 month. No one bit. No one believed. The last I heard, she was freelancing as a consultant. No employees. No clients with real names. Just buzzwords and desperation. There was no satisfaction in watching someone's life collapse, but there was peace in knowing it was deserved. She taught me how to hide fear. She taught me how power corrupts. But most of all, she taught me the cost of silence. So I stopped being silent. And I built something better. Not just a new job. New self. One who never lets anyone tell her she's lucky to be here. One who knows her worth. And won't let anyone forget it again. It's been almost a year since the day I was fired. A lot has changed. I'm still at the new company. Now promoted, leading a small team. I'm respected here. Listened to. I take my vacation days without guilt. I'm paid what I'm worth, and more importantly, I'm treated like a human being. There are moments, still, when I feel the ghosts of my past. I flinch when a meeting is suddenly moved. I second-guess myself before hitting send on an email. The scars didn't vanish. But they became armor. I learned to ask harder questions. I learned to walk away at the first red flag. Most of all, I learned this. Loyalty should never be given to those who treat it like a leash. Cynthia taught me that. She thought firing me would be the end of my story. But it was only the end of her illusion of control. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I didn't burn the building down. I simply pulled one brick. Then another. Then another. And her empire collapsed all on its own. Some people chase revenge with anger. I chased it with strategy, patience, precision. And when the time was right, I let the truth do what truth always does. Expose, unravel, and level everything in its path. So yes, she fired me. But in doing so, she freed me. And she thought that was her victory. She didn't expect that I'd turn it into a fire that would burn her empire down.